What's up, everybody? Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson, back with you. We are, of course, from RotoWire.com, walking you through some waiver wire options as we look ahead to Week 6 of the NFL season. We'll hit a couple of the obvious names, some names that everybody should be paying attention to, but this is sticky ads after all, Jeff. So we'll try to really get in the mud a little bit, find some low-owned players who can help out your fantasy football teams. I'll kick it over to you first, Jeff. Where are we starting?
All right, we'll start off Captain Obvious as we always do. Let's go running backs first. Tank Bigsby, you're a Jaguars guy.
I am.
This is one where if you've been paying attention all along, you know that Bigsby's been the more effective back running the ball than Travis Etienne. We've seen the workload change accordingly. Both Etienne and Bigsby were dealing with shoulder issues heading into last week, but Bigsby ran just fine. Etienne did not. We didn't see as much of Etienne in the second half. I think this is the adjustment that the Jaguars need to make for right now. So go get them. They get the London game this week. It is against the Bears. Chuba Hubbard got us there against the Bears last week, so I think Bigsby could do the same. Just a question about usage here.
Yeah, I have Tank on my list as well. I mean, he's under 10% rostered in ESPN League. So I think he still might qualify as sneaky. Did finally overtake Etienne in total snaps last week against the Colts. Now, Doug Peterson came out after the game and said, don't read too much into it. We were kind of riding the hot hand. It's not going to be like that going forward. We'll see. I don't know if we can trust anything that comes out of the mouth of Doug Peterson at this point, but the numbers don't lie, man. I mean, Tank Bigsby is literally leading the NFL in yards per carry this season. He has been the far more effective rusher than Travis Etienne. I still think Etienne's a good player. I think it has been somewhat happenstance that, Bigsby seems to be on the field whenever they have a big play. I still think Etienne's a good player. I don't see Bigsby ever, running away with this job this season, but he's been too good to keep off the field at this point. What other running backs are you keeping an eye on this week, Jeff?
So the other usable option for Week 6 has to be Tyrone Tracy. I think we saw something out of Tracy that we didn't see out of Devin Singletary earlier this year. Singletary's been fine, but he's just been fine. Tracy, I thought, was actually really good against Seattle. And they get to face the Bengals on Sunday Night Football this upcoming week, and I think that's a fantastic matchup for him. We'll hear more about that later on when we talk about another position. But Tracy might actually, if we know that Singletary isn't going to play this week, Tracy would be my priority to add, and he's widely available.
And, it's too early in the week to know for sure, but I think it's 50-50 that Singletary is back out there. I think it's completely reasonable to think that could at the very least be a late week decision. And I'm glad you mentioned the matchup against Cincinnati. I mean, I think that is a really, really good spot for Tyrone Tracy to get going once again after running all over Seattle. I got a couple running backs I'll run by you quickly. Antonio Gibson is a name I'm always staring at in some of my deeper leagues. And, we split snaps equally with Ramondre Stevenson this past week against Miami. So Stevenson was still, more of the go-to back in that game. But, the Patriots have been pretty public about wavering on their support for Ramondre Stevenson, who did not lose a fumble this week. We got to give him that. But Gibson is still the big play potential back for this team. Right. This is a team that has very few big play options in the passing game, in the running game, on special teams, doesn't matter. Gibson ran only 6 times against Miami, picked up 52 yards. It's almost 9 yards per carry. He catches passes out of the backfield as well. Maybe we see this offense, present a little more upside if and when Drake Maye takes over. I think that could be coming in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Ultimately, though, with Gibson, low touchdown potential, not somebody who really sees a lot of goal line work, but it feels like every single week, man, he makes a big play, whether it's on the ground or catching the ball through the air. So maybe he's more of a handcuff, if Stevenson were to get hurt or officially lose his grip on the job. But I'm keeping an eye, at least, on Antonio Gibson in my deeper leagues. We got to mention Ty Chandler as well, Jeff. And the Vikings are on bye in week 6, so that's why he wasn't featured earlier in the video. But keep an eye on Aaron Jones getting an MRI on Monday. We have no idea at this point, how much time he could miss. But if this ends up being a multi-week injury, Ty Chandler would very, very clearly be the guy in Minnesota. We saw a little bit of Myles Gaskin after Aaron Jones went out, but Chandler outsnapped him 46-5. So if Aaron Jones does miss time, no doubt in my mind, Ty Chandler has to be the RB1.
Yep. Same thing applies to Jaylen Wright in Miami, except it's less clarity. But Wright's available, 7% rostered on Yahoo. But Miami is on bye. Devon Achane suffered the concussion early against the Pats. He'll have 2 weeks to recover. The Dolphins are as acutely aware of concussion issues as any organization in football, maybe in sport. So just something to watch for there. Wright showed some speed and some upside. He looked pretty good against the Pats, but you do have to wait until week 7 to use them there. Other deeper names like Dario Ogunbowale for Houston going up against the Pats. You talked about the Pats side of things there. I mean, he got more snaps than Cam Akers this past week. We don't know when Joe Mixon's coming back. We don't know when anybody else is coming back on that Houston team. It's a week-to-week injury for Nico Collins as well on that team. So there's going to be perhaps more carries to go around, maybe more throws to the running backs. Dare is the pass catcher. So that's something I'd kind of keep an eye on there too.
Well, and if they lose their kicker, we know that he can kick extra points. So
that's true.
There's a potential for some bonus points with Dario Ogunbowale.
Niners should have signed him.
Yeah, right. The only other back I'll throw out, Jeff, is Roschon Johnson. And, we've had a stunning reversal for DeAndre Swift's reputation and fantasy value over the last 2 weeks. Like all of a sudden he's back to being startable. So Roschon, not as appealing as he looked to be a week or two ago, but, still seeing some short yardage work. He vultured 2 touchdowns on Sunday against Carolina. Mostly interested in him as a deeper, 1 week fill-in option where you're just throwing out a Hail Mary and hoping you get a touchdown. But the schedule is pretty friendly coming up for this Bears offense. They get the Jags in London next week. Then they're on bye. Yep. Then the Commanders, the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Packers. I think all of those are pretty attackable defenses for that Bears offense. Before we get into some wide receivers we're targeting, please give this video a like if you're enjoying it. And make sure you're, of course, subscribed to the RotoWire YouTube channel. We'll continue to bring you a ton of football content all the way through the NFL season. Let's talk receivers, Jeff. Where are we going first?
Oh, we got to go to Dallas. I think it's the obvious of most obvious, and yet he's less than 10% roster, and that's Jalen Tolbert. On the field for more snaps actually than CeeDee Lamb last night, 68 to 66. Now, a couple of those were just issues there where it's like, okay, it was a running play. We're going to have him not waste CeeDee to block or something like that. But, he's clearly a guy that has really risen in status in the organization. Brandon Cooks is on IR. It's not just a short-term thing. It's at minimum 3 more games or 3 more weeks, I should say, for Cooks. So Tolbert is going to be somebody there that we can kind of count on there for a volume. And I think that's one of the things. Volume is always king. I think he's going to get his share. Obviously, Dak trusts him through the game-winning touchdown, 4th down to him. Watch the groin, obviously. That's something that seemed like he tweaked the play before catching the game-winning score. In fact, if Dallas doesn't call timeout, he's not even on the field for that play, but they used a timeout, so he's eligible to stay in. But we heard of this all the way back in training camp that Tolbert was advancing, not making advances. That's weird and creepy. But CeeDee Lamb was holding out. Tolbert was the guy that was benefiting in training camp, and you see it now in the regular season.
Yeah, keep a close eye on his groin. He's making advances. Yeah, I don't know, Jeff. I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. But no, you're right, man. And, I think you look at CeeDee Lamb's numbers the last couple of weeks, and it's a little bit wanting. But teams are just focusing so much on CeeDee Lamb that it's opening things up for Jalen Tolbert. It's not like CeeDee Lamb got worse over the last 2 weeks. I mean, we saw it with the Steelers. I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick was all over him, providing double coverage on Sunday night. And I think teams know they can do that against Dallas when you have, just kind of the one big name playmaker. And I think that's part of the reason that Tolbert's been as effective as he has been. And like you mentioned, Brandon Cooks on IR. So there's a nice little runway here for Tolbert. I'm going to mention 2 Colts receivers, Jeff, in tandem here, Josh Downs and Alec Pierce. And then in my notes, I have maybe ? It all comes down to the quarterback play. It's like, if we continue to see Joe Flacco, which it feels is probably unlikely, I think you got to give Richardson another chance once he's healthy. But Joe Flacco, as he does everywhere he goes late in his career, has completely changed the scope of this Colts offense. I mean, Downs has been targeted 21 times over the last 2 games by Joe Flacco. 17 catches on those 21 targets for 151 yards and a score. He's still technically the 3rd receiver in terms of snaps behind Michael Pittman and behind Alec Pierce, but he had more targets than both of those guys did combined against Jacksonville. It just comes down to the quarterback play. How much do you trust Anthony Richardson? How much of a reduction in volume do we see once he's back in the mix? But the longer the Colts stick with Joe Flacco, the longer Anthony Richardson can't go, the better it is for Downs and the better it is for Alec Pierce, who somehow has like 2 40-yard catches every single week.
It's amazing, especially when he's on. But, the thing is, they run him on deep patterns all the time. Every once in a while, they throw it to him. Yeah. Go figure. It's like defenses are shocked, I tell you, that they're going to throw deep to Alec Pierce. I like what those guys. I'll throw in one other one in a continuing theme of Giants versus Bengals. Darius Slayton. Even if Malik Neighbors returns from his concussion, Slayton might be still okay. Bengals are down 2 corners. We'll see if Mike Hilton comes back, but we know that Dax Hill is out for the year. Bengals are really hurting in their secondary right now. Slayton used to be a number one. So if you're hurting, if you've got Tyreek Hill on bye this upcoming week, throw Slayton in there for the primetime game.
All right, I like it. And I'll throw out one more as well. This is the definition of a sneaky ad, Jeff. Xavier Hutchinson of the Houston Texans. Obviously, we saw Nico Collins exit that game just before halftime on Sunday against Buffalo. The Texans have since clarified that he's more week to week than day to day. So I think we got to brace for at least one missed game for Nico Collins, perhaps more. And you look at the raw numbers for Hutchinson, didn't do much against Buffalo on Sunday. Didn't really see a whole lot from that Houston offense in general after Nico Collins went out. But Hutchinson played 48 snaps. He played more snaps in that game than Tank Dell. Ran 28 routes, was only targeted 3 times. But in 11 personnel, Hutchinson essentially took over the Nico Collins role for the entire second half. So not a guy with a ton of name value, not somebody you're going to have to bid a ton on in most leagues, 6th rounder out of Iowa State last season. But he is somebody that started to work in for the Texans down the stretch as a rookie. I mean, he was getting a decent snap share toward the end of last season. So I think they have some trust in him. And, if Nico Collins misses multiple weeks and, you're in bye week jail, you're in injury jail in your league, wouldn't mind throwing out a Hail Mary on Xavier Hutchinson. Houston, by the way, gets the Patriots, the Packers, and the Colts over its next 3 games.
Yep. Truly a sneaky ad, because everybody's talking about Tank Dell as the guy that might benefit. And you're like, no, just what could be Hutchinson. We'll see.
Yeah.
And that probably has a lot to do with the routes they're running in practice, because he's the true second team guy. So he's running Collins's routes. Now, maybe they adjust in practice this week. We'll see, knowing that Collins won't be around for practice.
Yeah, very, very possibly. Let's go to tight end, Jeff. I didn't have much this week.
No.
It's like, hopefully you grabbed Tucker Kraft already. He's not a sneaky ad anymore. Colby Parkinson, his roster rate is getting up there as well. The one note that I had is to just double check on TJ Hockenson. Again, The Vikings are on bye in week 6, but his practice window is open. There's a chance, maybe if you don't have an IR spot, he could be out there. I know he's available in like 20% of ESPN leagues. So not sneaky, but you could make a sneaky maneuver by grabbing Hockenson before he's activated. What did you have at tight end?
Yeah, so I got the same issue. There is no Tucker Kraft this week. There's a stash. There's Parkinson, who's also on bye this week. Or check to see if Conklin and Ty Conklin and Cade Otton are available. They're about 30% rostered in Yahoo leagues, but that means usually the leagues that you and I are playing in are typically they're already rostered. But hey, the target share at least is there for them. It's pretty grim otherwise. I'm trying to, I don't have a whole lot of other pivots there that you can go to. Yeah. I'm not going to say Charlie Kohler. I think you missed the one great Charlie Kohler game of the season. It's pretty really thin gruel.
Yeah, it's sneaky ads. It's not reckless ads. We're not going to give you advice that we wouldn't take ourselves. What about quarterback, Jeff? We're looking more at 2 quarterback leagues, stashes, super flex, things like that. Anybody piquing your interest this week?
If I'm streaming quarterbacks because I'm a Patrick Mahomes manager, I'm going to Daniel Jones. This is what I teased. I mean, what? Daniel Jones? First of all, he actually looked pretty good the last couple of weeks. Secondly, Bengals. Keep going back to that. This is an offense curer. It is a team that you really want to have your guys go up against. I don't see that changing this week. So go Daniel Jones if you need it. Otherwise, I mean, it's kind of thin out there. It's like, Aidan O'Connell is going to have a job for the Raiders, but am I going to recommend that? I mean, only in a super flex league and on a dare. It's really not promising. Yeah, of course, if Flacco's available, go get him. And if he starts against Tennessee, check to see Tennessee's situation. Will Levis wasn't practicing on Monday. But Daniel Jones is the clear stream guy this week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, doing what he did against Seattle without Malik Neighbors, that was the big thing, right? I mean, that was a Daniel Jones game. That was not Malik Neighbors bailing him out. It wasn't even Wan'Dale Robinson bailing him out. That was Daniel Jones just, looking better than he has for the most part over the last couple of years. I had AOC on my list as well. You might have to be in like a super flex league where you're starting 3 quarterbacks in order to pick him up. But look, I mean, I'm in a couple super flex leagues where things are barren. Maybe you have 1 or 2 quarterbacks on bye. You got to get somebody in there. I mean, obviously he's going to be available. And keep an eye on Drake Maye. It's coming soon. I don't know if it's going to be this week. I don't know if it's going to be the week after, but it's coming soon. The Patriots can only wait so much longer there. Ultimately, pretty low upside. But again, if you're looking for a second quarterback or even a third to kind of rotate in super flex, I think you can look at him. And then we'll end on this. He's not a sneaky ad, but he's still available in about 60% of ESPN leagues. Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is widely available, man. That Atlanta offense took a massive step forward on Thursday night against Tampa Bay. I mean, that was the type of game that we have not seen from Atlanta in years. And obviously Kirk Cousins is not going to be throwing for 500 yards every week, but Atlanta's not really running the ball very effectively right now. I think they're going to have to keep leaning on the pass until they get that figured out. And you look at some of the matchups coming up for the Falcons: Carolina, Seattle, who's just been trounced each of the last 2 weeks. They get Tampa Bay again 3 weeks from now, and then you get Dallas, another shaky secondary. So, I think you bring up a good point with someone like Patrick Mahomes, where like all of a sudden, if you're not comfortable starting him, well, you're going to have to pivot to one of those veterans. Maybe you were somebody who, was going to be content going with Matthew Stafford. That's not looking all that great either. I think Kirk Cousins is a pretty reasonable streaming option with that upcoming schedule.
Yeah, I agree. I do think the running game gets going against Carolina. Yeah, I think hopefully teams are running really easily against Carolina so far. So, but yeah, if Cousins available, pick him up. Hey, we're really going on a limb and telling you to pick up the 500-yard passer. That's us.
Yeah, make sure you grab Lamar Jackson this week as well. Double check for Derrick Henry, see if he's out there. But that'll do it for our Week 6 sneaky ads. Again, if you're enjoying these videos, please give us a like and make sure you are subscribed to the RotoWire YouTube channel. We also have a secondary channel, RotoWire Fantasy Football. So hit up both of those. That way you won't miss any of our content throughout the rest of the season. Jeff, fun chatting with you as always, man. I'll see you on SiriusXM later tonight. Best of luck to everybody as the Week 6 waivers run.